The empty apartment. The city was wrapped in its usual gray silence when Lina returned home that evening. Neon lights bled through her apartment's thin curtains, painting the walls with restless colors. She placed her keys on the counter, their echo sharp in the stillness. The clock ticked without mercy. Another dinner for one. Another night without a word from Zhang Jian. Her husband's message arrived late, as always. Work trip extended. Don't wait up. No warmth. No punctuation beyond necessity. She read it twice, her thumb hovering over the reply icon, then set the phone aside. What could she even say? She had stopped asking when he would return. The real question was why she still waited. Lina moved through the apartment like a ghost, habit without meaning. She poured water into a glass, stared at her reflection in the window. The city beyond pulsed with life. She felt none of it. Once, she had believed marriage would anchor her. Instead, it became an island of quiet loneliness. The shrill ring of her phone startled her. Aunt May's voice crackled through, lively as always. "Lina, are you free tomorrow?" "Tomorrow?" Lina's tone was wary. "Why?" "My niece's wedding. You remember? They've been pestering me." "Where's Lina's husband? Why doesn't she bring him to family events?" "I told them you'd come this time with him." Lina pressed her lips together. "You know Jian is away again. That man's always away." Aunt May sighed, the kind that carried both affection and frustration. "Listen, they're strict about invitations. No husband, no entry. It's ridiculous, but you know how they are. Unless—" Lina frowned. "Unless what?" "Unless you bring someone, just for a day. A friend, an actor, anyone polite enough to smile and stand beside you. It's just a dinner and some pictures." Lina laughed, the sound small and tired. "You want me to pretend I have a husband?" "Not pretend. Just fill the silence he leaves behind." The phrase lingered after the call ended. Fill the silence. She looked around her apartment, every corner heavy with absence. Maybe Emma was right. Maybe a single day of pretending would hurt less than another night of waiting. The next morning, she met Chenwei. It was Aunt May's arrangement. A reliable man, she'd said. Polite, quiet, and willing to help. They met at a small cafe near the station. He arrived first, tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in plain clothes that somehow carried a quiet dignity. When she entered, he stood at once, as if respect was instinct, not habit. "Lina," he asked gently. His voice was calm, low, and warm in a way she hadn't expected. "Yes, you must be Chenwei." He nodded. "Aunt May told me what you needed. I don't mind helping. Just tell me what to say, and I'll do it." She smiled awkwardly. "It's strange, isn't it? Asking a stranger to pretend to be your husband." He shrugged lightly. Sometimes strangers play the roles others should have cherished. His words caught her off guard. There was no judgment in them, just quiet observation. He stirred his coffee, unhurried, as if time moved differently around him. "So," he continued, "what kind of man am I supposed to be tomorrow?" She hesitated. "Kind, reliable, the kind of man people believe loves his wife." His eyes lifted from the cup, meeting hers briefly before he smiled. "That I can do." They spoke for another hour, setting details, how long they'd been married, where they supposedly lived, how they met. But beneath the planning, something else stirred. A calm connection, fragile but undeniable. Chenwei listened, not to respond, but to understand. It had been years since anyone did. When they stood to leave, the afternoon light streamed through the cafe window, outlining their figures in gold. Lina extended her hand in gratitude, but he didn't take it. Instead, he said softly, "You don't have to thank me yet. Tomorrow, I'll be your husband. Let's make them believe it." She laughed lightly, the sound more genuine this time. "You make it sound like a mission." "Maybe it is," he replied. "For one day, at least." That night, Lina couldn't sleep. She lay awake, tracing the city's distant sounds, the hum of cars, the faint chatter of neighbors. For once, her thoughts didn't orbit her husband. They lingered on Chun Wei's voice, his steady composure, the strange comfort of being seen, even for an hour. It wasn't attraction she felt. Not yet. It was recognition, like discovering a forgotten language she used to speak fluently but had long abandoned. Her phone buzzed again. Another message from Zhang Jian. Meeting delayed. Don't wait for me this week. She stared at it for a long time, then deleted it. No reply. No explanation. Just quiet acceptance. Tomorrow, she thought, someone will stand beside me. Not because he must, but because he chose to. For one day, she would no longer be invisible. And somewhere across the city, in a modest rented room, Chunwei looked out the window at the glowing skyline. He unfolded a small letter from Aunt May, Lina's name written neatly at the top, and smiled faintly. He didn't mention it, but he knew the woman he was about to help was more than a favor owed. The next day would change them both, a day that felt real. The wedding hall shimmered with gold and red, the colors of prosperity. Lina hesitated at the entrance, her hand tightening around the small, clutch bag she carried. Laughter and music drifted through the air, but to her it all sounded distant, like a world she no longer belonged to. Then Shenwei appeared beside her. A dark suit, clean and simple, yet somehow dignified. The moment he stood next to her, heads turned. Not because of extravagance, but because he looked as though he belonged there, grounded, self-assured, his calm presence wrapping around her like a silent shield. "You're late," she whispered, half teasing, half anxious. He smiled. "Traffic. But you look prepared for battle." "Against judgmental relatives?" she replied softly. "Always." He offered his arm. She took it. And just like that, the first lie began, gentle, necessary, and almost comforting. They entered the hall together, a pair that drew admiring glances. Aunt May hurried over, eyes glinting with approval. "Oh, you two look perfect," she whispered. "Remember, married 3 years, met through a charity event, and no children yet." Lina nodded, forcing a polite smile. Chenwei merely said, "Got it," in his calm, assured tone. As they mingled, Lina noticed something unexpected. Chenwei was effortlessly convincing. He greeted her relatives with quiet charm, listened more than he spoke, and smiled at all the right moments. When asked about work, he simply replied, "I manage a bit of land back home," his understatement so natural that no one questioned it. At the dinner table, their seats were close, too close for her comfort at first. But when someone made a careless remark, "Your husband seems better behaved than most city men," she caught Chunwei's brief glance, a small smile meant only for her. It wasn't flirtation. It was understanding. For the first time in years, Lina felt defended. They danced later under the soft glow of string lights. The air outside the banquet hall was cool, scented faintly of jasmine and rain. Music floated out through open doors as Chan Wei extended his hand. "I'm not much of a dancer," she murmured. "Neither am I," he said, "but that makes 2 of us." They moved slowly, clumsily, yet perfectly in rhythm with each other's silence. Every movement carried something unspoken, gratitude, comfort, maybe the faint ache of 2 people who understood loneliness too well. "You play the role better than expected," she said with a quiet laugh. He looked down at her. "Maybe it isn't all pretend." The words lingered between them, delicate and dangerous. Lina looked away, her pulse quickening. "You shouldn't say things like that." "I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable," he replied softly. "I just meant, you deserve someone who looks at you the way you wish your husband would." His voice held no judgment, only truth. It hurt in a way she couldn't name. The night wore on, filled with smiles and photographs that meant nothing to anyone but her. Every picture of them together, her hand on his arm, his head tilted toward her, felt like evidence of something she wasn't ready to acknowledge. When the wedding ended, they walked to the parking lot in silence. The street was quiet except for the gentle hum of traffic in the distance. Chenwei stopped near his car, turning to her with that same calm steadiness. "You played your part perfectly," he said. "So did you." He hesitated, then added, "But if this were real, I'd tell you something your husband should have said long ago." She frowned. "What's that?" "That you looked beautiful tonight." Her breath caught. The sincerity in his tone disarmed her more than the words themselves. She wanted to reply, thank him, scold him, say something, but her voice failed. Instead, she turned toward the car window, watching city lights blur into streaks as they drove. The silence between them was filled with unspoken emotion, the kind that both soothes and suffocates. When he stopped outside her apartment, she reached for the handle, hesitated, then looked at him. "Thank you," she whispered, "for helping me today. I didn't realize how much I needed someone to just stand beside me." He nodded. "You don't owe me thanks. You owe yourself kindness." She stepped out into the cool night, her heels clicking softly against the pavement. At the door, she turned one last time. Chunwei hadn't driven off yet. He was watching her from the car, not possessively, but with quiet concern. In that fleeting glance, she felt both exposed and comforted. When she finally entered the apartment, the emptiness felt heavier than before. The silence, once familiar, now felt unbearable. She poured a glass of water, but her reflection in the window seemed different, less hollow, more aware. Her phone buzzed on the table. A message from Zhang Jian. "You attended the wedding, right? Hope you didn't embarrass me." She stared at the screen, then deleted the message without replying. Somewhere deep inside, something shifted. The lie she had told today felt more truthful than the marriage she still lived in. As she turned off the lights, her mind returned to Chun Wei's voice, the steady rhythm of his words, the weight of his silence. It had been only one day, but it had felt real, too real. And for the first time in years, Li Na wondered what it would feel like to be truly seen, not as a wife, but as a woman. The storm between two homes. Rain fell hard against the city that morning, washing color from the streets. Li Na stood by the window, staring into the gray mist that blurred the skyline. The quiet inside her apartment was familiar, but no longer gentle. It pressed against her like guilt. Every echo reminded her of that one day when she had felt alive again. She hadn't seen Chen Wei since the wedding. Not because she didn't want to, but because she didn't know what to do with what lingered between them. His kindness had been simple, his presence steady. Yet those qualities exposed everything her marriage had lost. Her phone buzzed. The name flashing on the screen froze her breath. Zhang Jian. "Back in town. I'll be home tonight." No warning, no warmth. Just a statement. She felt the weight of her secret settle like a stone in her chest. She had done nothing wrong, she told herself. No betrayal, no sin, only a single day of pretending. But even so, something about it felt unfaithful. That evening, when Zhang Jian walked through the door, he looked like the memory she'd been trying to forget. Immaculate suit, polished shoes, and a face untouched by fatigue or guilt. He kissed her cheek absently, the gesture rehearsed. "Why didn't you tell me about the wedding?" he asked, loosening his tie. "I didn't think you'd care," she said softly. He laughed without humor. "Of course I care. My wife's family likes to gossip. I can't have them saying I neglect you." His tone was practical, transactional, like everything else between them. They ate in silence. The sound of the rain filled the pauses where conversation should have been. Halfway through the meal, he glanced up. "You didn't go alone, did you?" Li Na froze. "What do you mean?" "May sent me pictures. You were with someone." Her fork slipped, clattering against the plate. "That was a friend. A favor. Who is he?" The question was sharp, but not from jealousy, curiosity, perhaps, or suspicion of impropriety. Li Na's pulse raced. "His name is Chun Wei. Aunt May introduced us. He helped so I wouldn't cause embarrassment by going alone." Zhang Jian leaned back, eyes narrowing. "A stranger pretended to be your husband?" She met his gaze. "Only for one day. You left me no choice." He didn't answer. His silence was worse than shouting. When he finally spoke, his voice was cool. "Do you know how that makes me look?" "How you look?" Her voice rose. "You weren't even there. You never are." The argument flared briefly, then collapsed into silence again. Two people staring across a table that felt wider than an ocean. Later that night, when he went to his study to take a call, Li Na slipped out to the balcony. The rain had stopped, but the air still smelled of thunder. She pulled her shawl tighter, closing her eyes against the wind. Then, footsteps behind her. She turned, startled. Chun Wei stood near the gate below, holding something small in his hand. A scarf. Hers, left behind at the wedding. He looked up as she stepped down toward him. "I didn't mean to disturb you," he said. "I just found this in my car. You could have called." "I did." "You didn't answer." Their eyes met, and for a moment, the world shrank to that single space between them. She took the scarf, her fingers brushing his, too brief, too dangerous. Before either could speak again, Zhang Jian's voice came from the doorway. "Who's there?" Li Na froze. Chen Wei turned slowly, expression calm. "Chen Wei," he said politely. "I came to return something my friend left behind." Zhang Jian's gaze swept over him, calculating. "Friend? You again?" Li Na stepped forward quickly. "He's leaving." But Zhang Jian wasn't done. "I don't like strangers showing up at my home." Chen Wei's voice stayed level. "Then consider me gone. I meant no disrespect." He left without another word, his footsteps fading into the wet street. Li Na stood there, heart pounding, while her husband muttered something about impropriety and image. But she wasn't listening. The sound of Chen Wei's retreating footsteps felt heavier than any reprimand. That night, she sat alone in the living room long after Zhang Jian had gone to bed. Her scarf lay across her lap, carrying the faint scent of rain and dust. She thought about the way Chen Wei had looked at her, steady, without judgment, without possession, just present. Her phone vibrated. A message from Aunt May. "Did you know Chen Wei's family owns land out west? A big ranch, thousands of acres. He's one of the richest men in the province, but he never talks about it. Keeps everything quiet." Li Na stared at the message, stunned. So that was why he spoke of a bit of land. He had hidden it, not out of pride, but out of humility. She whispered to the empty room. "He never even told me." Her reflection in the dark window looked back, unfamiliar. A woman balanced between guilt and yearning, between the comfort of safety and the ache of something real. Outside, the storm began again, soft at first, then fierce like the rhythm of a heart that didn't know what it wanted. The farewell at the ranch. Days passed, yet sleep remained a stranger to Li Na. Every corner of her apartment carried echoes. Zhang Jian's indifference, Chen Wei's quiet voice, the hum of words left unsaid. The air between guilt and longing had grown heavy, and her reflection had become someone she barely recognized. The message from Aunt May replayed in her mind. Chen Wei's family owns a ranch, miles of land out west. He hadn't lied. He had only chosen simplicity over pride. And somehow, that made the truth harder to bear. One dawn, without a plan, Li Na packed a small bag. Zhang Jian slept soundly in the next room, his phone buzzing with work alerts. She watched him for a long moment, realizing that she felt nothing. No anger, no affection, only the numb resignation of years wasted in silence. When the first light crept across the horizon, she left. The train ride to the Western Plains was long, quiet, and strangely cleansing. The farther the city shrank behind her, the more she felt the weight of pretense slip away. The scenery shifted from glass towers to open fields, from noise to stillness. It was as if the land itself whispered a different language, one she could finally understand. By midday, she arrived at a small station near the foothills. A taxi driver, gray-haired and friendly, nodded when she asked for Chen Ranch. "You mean the Chen family estate? The young master rarely has visitors." Li Na smiled faintly. "I'm not a visitor, just someone who needs to say goodbye." The car followed a dirt road lined with golden grass. The sky stretched endlessly above them, vast and forgiving. When the ranch came into view, wooden fences, grazing horses, fields kissed by sun, Li Na's breath caught. It felt unreal, like a scene from a forgotten story. She found Chen Wei near the stables, sleeves rolled, hands steady as he brushed a chestnut horse. He looked different here, rooted at ease. The man who had once stood quietly beside her in a crowded hall now looked entirely himself. He noticed her before she spoke. Surprise flickered across his features, quickly replaced by calm recognition. "Li Na," he said simply, setting the brush aside. "I didn't expect you." "I didn't expect myself either," she replied softly. They stood facing each other in the open air, the silence between them deep but not uncomfortable. She gestured toward the fields. "This is your world, isn't it?" He nodded. "It's peaceful here. People don't ask who I am, only what needs doing." "You hit it," she said. "Your wealth, your family name." "I didn't hide. he corrected gently. I just wanted to be seen as a man, not a fortune. The words struck her deeply. For a moment, neither spoke. The wind carried the faint scent of hay and earth. Why did you come? He asked. Lena hesitated, then answered with honesty that startled even her. To thank you. To apologize. To understand. For what? For letting a day with you mean more than it should have. Chen Wei's eyes softened. Lena, what we shared wasn't wrong. We didn't cross a line, only found it and realized what it meant. She smiled faintly. I keep telling myself that, but the guilt doesn't fade. He stepped closer, his voice quiet. Guilt fades. Regret doesn't. Which one do you want to live with? Her eyes filled, but she didn't look away. I don't know anymore. They walked along the fence line, words replaced by the sound of wind brushing through the grass. He told her how he managed the ranch himself, how solitude became both burden and blessing. She spoke of the city's noise, of her empty apartment, of a husband who had become a stranger. You don't belong in that emptiness, Chen Wei said finally. You're too alive to live half asleep. And yet, I'm still married, she whispered. He nodded. Then wake up first. Decide after. A long silence followed. Then, Lena turned toward him, her voice steady. I can't stay. It wouldn't be fair. To you, or to myself. I know, he said. That's why I won't ask you to. At the gate, as the sky turned the color of rusted gold, they stopped. He reached into his pocket, pulling out her scarf, washed, folded neatly. I kept it, he said, not because I wanted to remember you, but because I didn't know how to forget. Her hands trembled as she took it. Then maybe forgetting isn't the answer. He smiled, a quiet, aching smile. Then maybe remembering differently is. As she turned to leave, he called out, Lena. She paused. Whatever you decide next, he said, make sure it's for yourself, not out of fear. She nodded once, unable to speak, and walked away as the sun dipped below the hills. By the time she returned to the city, dusk had fallen. Zhang Jian wasn't home. His message blinked on the screen, late meetings again. She deleted it without reading further. She placed her scarf on the counter, the faint scent of grass still clinging to it, and sat in silence. But for the first time, the silence didn't suffocate. It simply existed, like the space between endings and beginnings. In her journal, she wrote only one line. It wasn't love that betrayed me. It was loneliness. But for one day, I remembered who I was. She closed the book, exhaled, and let the night take her. Outside, somewhere far beyond the city lights, the ranch lay beneath a sky full of stars. And though neither would ever admit it, both knew that sometimes one day of truth could change the meaning of a lifetime.